we are, who are we? Who are we, and how do we identify ourselves? That's the basic thing in the work that I'm doing right now. Who are we? I went through like thinking, okay, well, I'm me, I'm Denise, I'm Black, and then, ooh, I don't really know Caribbean songs. Ooh, I don't really know African songs. Ooh, I have to learn to sing an African American spiritual. Holy moly. How do I call myself Black, for heaven's sake, right? So, but the thing is, that is my root. That is my root. And that's the diaspora that I come from. But I have been moved a few times to end up here in Toronto and to meet what I felt, people like Bram, and I studied my German lieder and my French chanson and my Italian song. I met Bram, who was an expert in all this beautiful, amazing Western music. And I realized, Bram, who are you? You weren't born there. Bram is not German or Italian or French. Bram has Jewish roots. So we realize something, that who we are is made up of, and what we do is made up of not only where we come from, but our environment and the environment we live in. And there's a history. We know that. We're taking something very simple right now, but then it goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So when we do say Jewish, when we do say Black, and sometimes we can't even say Black, we have to say Caribbean, we have to say African Canadian, we have to say African or Afrocentric or brown. You know, there's things we can't even say. We don't even know what we can say. There's a taboo. Or when we say Muslim, oh my goodness, there's a broad spectrum of people. We may not expect a Muslim person to look like Salima, but she is, and that's how she looks. And the thing is, there's the Persian element and Iranian element that I'm beginning to learn. I used to pull them all in one big basket. So I'm thinking here of the diasporas and how we came to be who we are. So that's where I'm at. That's my basic topic of today, and how we talk about it. And through history, and how else did we move? Through the history of time, through the fighting, through needing to migrate for reasons. Oh, I want to migrate to a new land. Oh, I want to take over a new land. You know, I want to go, I have power, I'm going to go and take over another place and have them do what I do. So we have colonialism, we have forcible migrations because we're getting killed. We're like, there's a huge genocide. Or, wow, we can use these people to work for us. The slaves, there's all kinds of ways that we got to where we are now. But bottom line, right now I feel a Torontonian. I've been living in Toronto all my life. And then I have to figure out, what does that mean? When I look at everybody here, we see these are our Torontonians. There are all kinds of cultures here. So I'm going to ask the question then, or I'm going to start with the fact of how we started this, Black and Jewish, and I'm going to be very short so I can get Bram to talk a little bit about it as well. So essentially, we were there doing our thing and learning our, you know, our European music, because that's what you do if you study music. And that's quite all over the world, classical music. There are areas that they don't consider that, but it's quite what we call, it's quite, thank you, it's quite a dominant, it's quite dominant, this music. So if you're anybody, and if you know your music, that's what you're studying. But then at the time, in 1995, Garth Drabinsky was producing Showboat. And Showboat, as we might know, is a depiction of the racial issues and the racial situation, political situation in the United States, where they called them at the time Negroes and niggers, and then colored folk. It was changing. And they couldn't really work in certain places, or if they worked in certain places, they couldn't work on the showboats. There'd be certain places for them to be, let's say, and integrating various things like that there. At the time, the general Black diaspora in Toronto, not everybody, but enough people, had the petition out to say, I'm sorry, but we don't really feel that this show should be shown here, because it really doesn't put Black people in a good light. right? The show starts with, colored for work in the Mississippi, colored for work while the might band play, while the might band play, while the might. Okay, obviously there's a lot of stuff that goes in the words here, but I figure it's a great show. Yes, it was composed by Jewish, Rogers and Hammerstein, and this group has reaped a lot of what we call benefit from a show like this. A lot of money, more money than the people that they represent, of course. And so these are some of the issues here. However, it's a great show. It's wonderful music, and for the first time in Toronto, a lot of black people can get hired to perform on a big stage. That it didn't happen before in the likes of, what's it called, that was there at the same time, Phantom of the Opera, right? So I'm gonna let Bram say a few words on this part.
Well, just to slightly go on about Showboat, I mean, Showboat does not, it portrays Black Americans in a very sympathetic. There's nothing in Showboat that says anything negative about stereotyping Black Americans of the time. Nothing. And the most famous song, which is what Denise was singing, is anyway, Old Man River is a picture of a black man working. But it's certainly not a picture of any, he is noble in the show. He is portrayed with sympathy as a great spirit. So there was absolutely nothing, and there never has been anything negative portraying black people in an unfavorable light. Yes, the show, because Rogers and Hammerstein basically ruled the Broadway music theater and the New York theater stage, the New York Live Theater was basically musical theater. There were a lot of Jewish people who were very, very involved with it. And Richard Rogers wasn't Jewish, but Oscar Hammerstein. So only one of the two. Was Rogers Jewish as well? Okay, then I'm wrong.
I don't think Hammerstein was Kern. Was Rogers.
Anyway, I have to look over that. Anyway, at the time, there was a very big political hue and cry in which many of the black activists in Toronto said a lot of extremely negative things and stirred up a lot of hatred, saying it was being produced by a Jewish guy, Stravinsky, written by Jews, and they didn't like the whole thing, and so that made me extremely upset. Denise and I at that time were seeing each other quite a bit, so we just talked one day, and I said that I was extremely upset and saddened that the black activists at the time in the city of Toronto would decide to make a public case about this show. And so 20 years ago, 22 years ago, whatever it was, a long time ago, we thought that it would be so positive to try and show the common aspects of the cultures, which you could go on about, but there are and there were many common aspects of the culture. And at the time of the people who rode the buses were called no, the buses, who went down from the north of the United States, they were called Freedom Riders. Freedom Riders. So they were Northern American liberals, so a lot of them were Jewish. Not all, but a lot of them were Northern American liberal Jewish people. So they were the ones who particularly were involved. They were called Freedom Riders, and they rented these buses, and they would go and protest with people like Martin Luther King, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted that to be reminded to people that there was much more in common than there was reason to tear us up. And thus was born, at that time, the idea of saying, well, let's do a performance.
Guess what? We said we're gonna do this performance in the same theater that Showboat was playing. Not the same big theater, but there was a smaller theater called the Studio Theater at the Toronto Centre for the Arts. And we said, we're gonna do that there. Because I read that they need to put it on the marquee and they need to post it in the program. So if you open the program in Showboat, it would say everything upcoming. And guess what we called it? Black and Jewish. So we thought it would get some eyes like, what? You know, Black and Jewish. So that's where it started. It has gone from there to the Glenpool studio, on radio, music around us, a CD of various songs, a lot in the Jewish community in synagogues. What else do we do? And now this. There's been others. Stratford.
It had a hiatus for a number of years.
Had a hiatus with Bram. Every time he would think, well, I haven't heard from Denise for a while. So, you know, we're impassioned, not necessarily by, we're impassioned by the music, of course, but it's not necessarily just the music. Bram and I perform a lot of amazing music, incredible, intense stuff. And a lot of this is very simple. It's very folk and very simple. But we're impassioned by the meaning behind it and by the fact that we feel that we are bringing along centuries of history and culture by singing this stuff, things that should not be forgotten at all, and should look for the commonalities and look for the, what we call ways that we can build those bridges. We can find them in the music. And so what finally happened and how I realized, wow, I can build a bridge, I was singing in the Toronto Jewish folk choir. And I was learning my Yiddish and singing in concerts, and I would kind of run off the stage very quickly because I realized I'm the only one here that really does not look like Jewish unless I'm Ethiopian or something like that. I didn't want to face the music of all the questions like, what are you doing here? Or that, you don't say it that way, but you say it this way. Generally, the Jewish people are quite outspoken. Generally, I found, not you, that you are. Yes. Anyway, bottom line is, okay, so we're going to do something else in a minute and open this to the floor. So basically, and I was asked, there was going to be a dialogue between the two cultures, Black and Jewish, with, I think Linda would know this because I met Linda there, and essentially the dialogue was an attempt to talk about this particular phenomenon and see how we could arrive at some understanding. Now, I wasn't thinking, but I was asked to sing spirituals and Jewish songs. I learned Walk Together Children in the Toronto Jewish Folk Choir. I did not know that spiritual. And some other freedom songs, and it finally clicked in my head, especially when I did things like Donna Donna, and it clicked in my head, connection, we already knew about the Bible and about the fact that the spirituals that were sung in the African American lands, especially where the Black people were oppressed in those lands, the spirituals went right back down to using those biblical texts. The only thing that people would allow them to have, or if they didn't even allow them to have, they knew them very well, because they read those texts, and use those texts to code their way and their way to freedom and their ways to hold freedom and just having fun. So when you hear, sometimes I feel like a motherless child, when you hear Walk Together Children, when you hear Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Peter Go Ring Them Bells, I heard from heaven today, when you hear people like Jesus, Moses, any of those other ones, they're often coded. And they don't necessarily mean it's Jesus, it's Moses. It means the leaders, like the Harriet Tubmans and the people who are doing this. So I say that because you will see that we're singing music today, and it seems like it just belongs to one tribe, and it doesn't. And when we sing O Say Shalom, bring Israel peace, I feel, yeah, bring us peace. It's us. We are Israel. We are the land. We're not identified. So, is there anything else? We're never going to bring in the Muslim component, so just hang in there. Yes? Anything else you wanted to mention in this?
Just, you guys have covered everything, but I'm from Ghana, and I've lived here probably more of my life, and coming at a time when the community, the black community, was centered, based mainly around Bathurst and Bloor, and finding our way. We were talking about codes, codifying things, and one time there was when honest heads was just half of where it was, and there was a fruit stand, a fruit shop, and one guy, a Jamaican guy, Ainsley Vaughan, he took the fruit, he was passing by, and dipped his hand, and took some grapes. And the guy said, "Hey, this thing is for sale. You should pay for it." So no, I won't pay. So the guy called the cops, and Ainsley walked through the lane. And at the time, I was working for Contrast newspaper, and I was together with, I think, 3 guys who were upstairs, and Ainsley was coming by, and the police had arrived, and they were looking for him. So we could see the police looking, and there was Ainsley going by. And so this Jamaican guy telling him, "Babylon, run, Babylon, Babylon, run." And the policeman is standing there scratching his bum and looking for him. And meanwhile, he's getting the codes. The police is here.
Oh, the codes.
Yes, so in Jamaica they call police Babylon.
Okay.
So he's telling him, the police is here, so run, go hide. So Ainsley went this way, and we were looking the other way, so the police went that other way. So,
wow. Codes already.
yeah, so we're talking about codes, but finding our way. And there were a lot of, not a lot, but we were in there with a number of Jewish shops, including